Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis.
Hey, welcome to the show, Leadership is Changing. What we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Leaders everywhere confront similar obstacles because people are people, but everywhere you go, leaders are overwhelmed, disrupted, and under pressure. They run from email to email, meeting to meeting. Many leaders are not changing quick enough, which means they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. The purpose of the show is taking our listeners' leadership to another level by finding their balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. I believe we don't have enough effective leaders in the world today, and if we can get the leaders to step up and lead change, then they can inspire real change. Hey listeners, it's now time to adapt in our fast-moving world. Hey listeners, welcome to today's Ask Denis Freestyle episode. Great to have you with us here again. And this is episode 310. And this is a freestyle episode that I do once a week. So I do 2 interviews with different leaders around the world, and then I do a freestyle version like you're hearing today. And it's where I'm asked a question by our listeners, or I share my thoughts, experiences, and insights from working with many leaders around the globe. Today's topic is going to be about creating new habits. Now, before we get into that, I just want to remind you, if you haven't already done a review or a rating on the podcast on Apple, we would love you to do that. And if you have done, the other one is you can do a rating on Spotify in relation to the podcast too. We'd love to see that come through. All right, let's talk about creating new habits. But before we do that, let's talk about the actual meaning of habit. According to the dictionary, it's a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. Now, according to Harvard in an article, a habit is a behavior done with little or no thought, and that we just do it as part of a habit type of thing, right? And so those behaviors can be done and we don't really think about it much. So I want to discuss this with you today about creating new habits, because you see, for some of you, you're probably doing some habits at the moment which are probably bad ones, and how do you let go of those and how do you stop? So that's one thing you probably want to think about as well. But sometimes the way you can actually get rid of old habits is replace it with new habits. And I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it, but that is one way to do it, is replace it with new habits. And sometimes people do need to let go of those old habits. And when we set a goal to do something in life or in business and so forth, we say, oh, we're going to go ahead and do this certain thing. Now, people can state it, but sometimes nothing happens. Why is that? Because they try it a few times or they do it a few times, and then it tends to sort of just wane off, or they don't do it at all. And so the key here is to actually make sure that we build on something that is actually easy to do and keep it easy, but build on it slowly. And if you can build on it slowly by piece, that's a good thing to do it. Well, good way to do it. There's an old saying out there, how can you eat a big goal or something as big as an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. And so habits need to start off small. Keep it simple. If you make it too difficult, then you probably aren't going to be successful in doing it. When I started my coaching business or career many decades back, we talked about brain-based coaching, how we work with people around the brain and their thoughts and what's going on there. Today, there is so much research out there from a neuroscience perspective and so forth, that the brain we can actually create new neuro pathways in the way that we're actually thinking, or our thoughts, or something that we might do. And this thing we can do on a regular basis. So what we do is we tend to create what we call highways in the brain, the highways of different pathways. And I'm going to give you an example to help you understand what do I mean by that. So if you think a big green field of grass, and it's quite high, but there's an area where people have been walking through that grass, and they've been going through it on a regular basis. So you'll see that the pathway is trodden down, or the grass is trodden down, and there's probably going to be some dirt that you can see as well, because that's the normal pathway that people take. Now, for us to get to somewhere else, we may need to create new habits. So we might need to think about that green grass again, that paddock, and then we're going to start walking in a different direction or a different path. At first, it's a little bit difficult when we start to do it. Why? Because the grass is a lot greener and possibly a lot higher. And as we start to do that, we start to find a little bit difficult as we walk through the grass. We might need to lift our knees a little bit higher just to be able to get out through our step out onto the next piece and the next piece and so forth. On day on day one, what you'll probably notice is that the grass will probably bounce back to its original position. On day 2, it might be a little bit easier for you. Day 3, a lot more easier. Day 4, and you're starting to see that the grass is trodden down and that there is a pathway there, but there's no dirt probably showing because the grass is probably covering it. The more and more you do it, the more and more you start to see a pathway starting to create. And so then that's what happens in our brain. As we start to think about something or as we start to do something, we start to create these new pathways in our brain and they start to become habits. So we tend to do them with little thought or no thought at all. And the thing here is that another analogy could be along the lines of you think about roading and a road. So here in New Zealand, we have a road that's just opened up on our highway, and it's called Transmission Gully. And as Transmission Gully has been built, they've put the roadway through the land, but everyone's been going on the old road. Now they've started to go on the new road, the new pathway that's there. But what you'll find is that there will be some people still go on the old road, but not many. Many are going to take this new road going forward. That's the new habit. That's the new way that they will go through. The old road will possibly still have some people going through it, but weeds will start to grow. They'll be overgrown and things won't be used as much. We see sometimes this happening in towns and cities around the world. A bypass is actually built around the city so people no longer go through the city. They tend to go through the city because they want to go through, and there's more of a targeted approach in what they're wanting to do, where the habit could be we just take the bypass, and that's something that we do, and we start to move through it, and we start to become the regular journey for us as we go through life. Now, the thing here is that people talk about the habit, how long does it take to form it? And there's an analogy out there that they talk about, or a theory out there that they talk about the habits should be taking about 30 days for a new one to be formed. I actually think it takes longer. 30 days, yes, but if you're not doing that habit every single day, and you're only doing it twice a week, or you're doing it once a week, because you see it's always different depending on what you're wanting to do, then it may take you a little bit longer. I think the key here really there is around consistency. If it is once a week, or if it is 3 times a week, or if it is every day, that you're consistently doing that on a regular basis, and over a period of time, that's how you will form the habit. If you keep doing it and you stay focused, it's going to help you set up for success. I think the other thing you should do too is take time out to reflect on a regular basis just to see how the habit's coming along. Is it going well? What can we do differently? And now what we will do going forward. And that's just really going to give you a better, stronger habit to actually have with you as you start to create it. The other thing I would say is that you celebrate the formation and the strong foundation that you've put in place for this new habit once it's established. Take time to create new habits. Just go out there and do this and think about it. But there is a process that you need to go through. Don't think you can just take a red pill, blue pill, green pill and go, ta-da, I've now formed the habit, because it doesn't actually work that way. We all have to work at it, whatever it is in life that you're wanting to do in creating new habits. In leadership and in business, there are certain things you will need to do to create the new habit. As an example, goal setting, planning, delegating is a new habit that you can actually set up as well. Because you can delegate, but for some people, they find it hard to delegate. Here's another good one, asking for help. Or do I have a habit of sitting down and planning my day every day, setting it up for success, knowing what meetings I have, knowing what questions I need to ask, and doing that on a regular basis? Are you doing that every day? Are you creating that habit to go ahead and do that? And if you haven't, maybe that's a good one for you to start doing. I know a lot of people want to lose weight and they start to set this goal, whether it be a New Year's resolution or whether it be a goal that they set them for themselves. But the thing is that sometimes we need to have different eating habits, but we might even have to have different workout habits as well, fitness, exercise. And so if we're not creating those different habits, it doesn't matter whether your goal is to lose weight, you probably won't get there unless you put these other habits in place to actually help and enable the goal to actually happen. The key words again today is around actually creating the new habit, but being disciplined, focused, and consistent in actually creating it. The other thing I'm going to say to you is that you may want to go out and research a little bit more about the habit. There's a good book out there for you to read. It's called Atomic Habits. And if you haven't already read it, it's by James Clear. Then go ahead and look for that book. Awesome book. And so I really highly recommend you do that. If you don't have time to read the book, look for the executive book summary. And if you don't know what that is, an executive book summary is when they take 200 or 300 pages from a book, they summarize it into 8 pages, and they give you the nuggets. So then you don't have to read the whole book. You can just read that summary. A lot more time saving. Probably can read it within 15 minutes, 20 minutes. There are all sorts of apps out there that can actually help you get these kind of executive book summaries. They even have an audio version, but also they have the written version, whatever's best for you. In fact, that's a habit as well. Maybe doing some research or finding books that you want to listen to or read and then doing that on a regular basis. For some of you, I know that you have a habit of listening to this podcast 3 times a week. Why? Because you're sending me messages about it, what you're learning, what you're hearing, what you're loving, and you're sending me those messages. I know for me, I know that's a habit that's actually happening for you and that they're actually there for you to listen to. In a nutshell, team, create habits, the ones that you want. If there are any old habits, replace them with new habits. Create the habits you want to actually see, experience, and do in life and in business. It really comes down to you. There's something else I've got to really say to you as well about creating habits. Have fun doing it. Enjoy the journey, because it is a journey, and for some of you, it's going to be a little bit difficult to actually try and do this at times. But whatever you're wanting to do, go for it. It's excellent, and it's something that you want to actually create. So at the end of the day, we can create habits. We can do things if we want to, but just have fun along the journey. Hey, listeners, what we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Change is incredibly scary, especially with the unknown and unfamiliar territory. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing. Look out for the episodes as they're being released. Download them, have a listen, put a review and a rating. Feel free to share them with your friends, your family, and your network. If there's any feedback you'd like to give me about the show, or if there's a question you have for the Ask Denis Freestyle episode, then send me an email, dennis@leadingchangepartners.com. Hey, listeners, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.